Hello, I'm Billy Stewart, Assistant Pastor here at Solid Rock Tabernacle, 1325 Rudy Road in Alma, Arkansas. Thank you for joining us for the broadcast. I'd like to extend this personal invitation for you to come join us in one of our spirit-filled services. Our Sunday school begins at 9 a.m., our Sunday morning worship is at 10 a.m., and our Sunday evening worship is at 6 p.m. We also have an exciting Wednesday evening Bible study that begins at 7 p.m. Come join us, won't you? 1325 Rudy Road in Alma, Arkansas. Hey, we'll save a seat for you. And now, let's join our service already in progress.
But we got the first couple of verses in chapter 6, and we talked about where the sons of God had married the daughters of men. Remember that? Yeah. Okay. And we found out what that meant, what that actually meant. Right. Went over the timeline. Yeah, we looked at the generations of people. Want to tell everybody on YouTube and Facebook, sorry about last week in the microphone, and had a little bit of echo in there, but we got it fixed this week, I'm pretty sure. So hopefully that'll all work that way. All right, let's get in. We made it to verses 3 and 4 is what we're going to get into and start with tonight. A lot of interesting stuff we're going to get into tonight. So we're getting close to the time where Noah is fixing to build his ark. All right? So Genesis chapter 6, verses 3 and 4 says, "And the Lord said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men. And they bare children to them, the same bare mighty men which were of old, men of renown." Okay? So, God is not going to allow the world to stay in that rebellious state that it was in forever. This means that there does come a point when God where there's no return from your rejection of God. There comes a point to where God says, okay, that's it. No more. Yeah. He says, no more. That's it. Okay? And that's what was happening then, and it happens today too. Romans 1:28 tells us that it was that there comes a point that God will turn them over to a reprobate mind, which means he'll turn them over to their evil thinking, turn them over to what they were, to their own devices. And he's going to quit pursuing them. Right? And when God quits pursuing you, then that's it. It's all over. Which is all the more reason why we need to say, and we need to convince people to say, today we're going to respond to Jesus. Today we're going to do this. We're not going to wait until tomorrow. We're not going to wait until next week. We're not going to wait until the weather's better. We're not going to wait for anything. We're going to do it today. Why? Because, we have no promise that God's going to draw us to him tomorrow. Okay? Because comes a time when he's just going to say, that's it. Okay? Done all I can for you. That's it. Now, it says, yet his days shall be 120 years. What does that mean? Okay, that's what it, when you first look at it, that's kind of what it seems, is that he's saying that, okay, from now on, man's only going to live to be 120 years old. Okay? But that's not what he's saying here. This is not the lifespan of man from that point on. What that is the time that's left until the judgment of the flood is going to come. So God's saying, man has 120 years before I destroy them.
So he started the doomsday.
Yeah, he started the doomsday clock. He started the doomsday clock right then. Okay? And we know that the flood happened 120 years after this announcement was made.
How old
Yeah.
was Noah whenever this happened?
When this happened, almost 500 years old. Yeah, when he started the ark, he was 500 years old. Okay? Yeah, 500 years young. Okay? Now, here's something that's really interesting that a lot of people misunderstand and confuse. All right? And we're going to get into that. Giants in the earth in that day. Right? Now, when we say that, obviously they're talking about the unnatural offspring of the sons of God and the daughters of men, right? That's what they were talking about. But what does this mean? What does giants mean? What do they mean by giants?
Well, that could be situations like it could be like a big canyon. A big canyon they can't get across.
Okay.
It could be a big body of water they
Okay.
can't get across.
Okay.
Giants could be problems.
There could be problems that they were having that they were facing. Yeah. Okay. I hear a lot of commentators talk about this, a lot of people, and a lot of preachers preach about this, saying that it was because of that the sons of God, which they interpret to be angels, mated with the daughters of men, which they said were people, that the offspring were giants. They were these big, huge people. Okay? But we saw that the sons of God were not the angels. Okay? Because the sons of God don't have a gender, or the angels don't have a gender. They're not neither male nor female. They can appear as male, they can appear as female. And when you look at the angels, the way most of the angels appear don't have any resemblance to human beings at all. Okay? So, what does a giant mean? Well, there were people that were of unusual size, both before and after the flood. It even says that there were giants before and after the flood. But these people that were of unusual size, just like we have people of unusual size today. You have people that are, 7.5 feet tall. Most of them play in the NBA, but, we have people that are fairly tall that are out there. So these were unusual, just like they're unusual now. But when we go back to the Hebrew word for giants, does anybody know what the Hebrew word? Y'all haven't heard that? I'm sure some of you have heard it. When I say it, I'm sure most of you will say, oh yeah, I remember that. The Hebrew word for giant is Nephilim. Some people call it Nephilium, but it's Nephilim, okay? It's actually pronounced Nephilim. Okay? Now, this comes from the root word Nephil. All right? As you can see, the spelling of the two, the only difference is a mem at the end. It's a Nephilim and Nephil. What this literally means, and when you translate it, it means bully or tyrant. Also giant, it means a giant person, but the primary meaning of it is bully or a tyrant. Somebody who just bullies everybody around. Okay? Now, they may have been large in size. In all likelihood, probably not any larger than most of the other people. The main point that he's trying to get across is these Nephilim were tyrants. They were bullies. They were tyrants. They were people that pushed everybody else around. There were people that were going, hey, yeah, you got to do what we want. Yeah, kind of like the government. Kind of like the way things are going today, huh? Okay? So it wasn't so much that these were these large people, these huge giants, although some of them may have been larger than other people were, but they were bullies. They were tired. Now, when we start getting into David and Goliath, we always picture Goliath as being this tall, huge person, which he may very well have been. But the word that used for Goliath on that, the giant Goliath, was Nephilim as well, which means that he was a big bully, which we see as he was doing things and how he did that. He was a big bully. Yeah. Okay? So, anybody ever been picked on by a bully? No? Nobody ever been? Yeah, I've been picked on by a bully. Hey? It's not fun. And sometimes they seem 10 feet tall and bulletproof. Okay? Now, let's look at verses 5 through 8. And God saw the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And it repented the Lord that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and creeping thing, and the fowls of the air, for it repenteth me that I made them. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. So what was going on? The only thing on man's mind was evil. Continuously, that's all he thought about was evil. Yeah, thinking about himself. Self-centered, it was man-centered. Just like we talked about when they made the city. It was man-centered. All right? Yeah, God was regretting. God regretted that he had even made man. Now, this says a whole lot. All right? What this is saying is that there was no aspect of man's life and man's nature that was not corrupted by sin. They found grace in Noah. Okay? And we're going to look at that in just a second too. Okay? Now, there has never been a more emphatic statement of wickedness, and once hardly conceivable, that every thought that they had was just evil. It was an evil thought. Okay? Yes. Yes. Similar to Sodom and Gomorrah, yes. So everything that they thought, every thought that they had, everything that they did was evil. Now let's look at something that Jesus said. All right? In Matthew 24:37. This is what Jesus said about his coming back. He said, but as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. Think about that for a second. Yeah, Jesus is saying the way it was before I destroyed the world with the flood, that's the way that it's going to be. The condition of the world before Jesus comes will be the same conditions as it was with Noah. Okay? Well, what were the conditions of Noah? And how can we relate those to the way they are now? Yeah, ungodly. Well, let's look at the first one. Let's go back to chapter 6, verse 1. Exploding population. We saw last week that at the time of the flood, there was probably somewhere around 7 billion people on the earth. Okay? There's right around 8 billion people now. So the population is exploding. Okay? See that in Genesis 6:1. Genesis 6:2 talked about sexual perversion. Wow. What do we have today? I mean, it's out of control sexual perversion. Right? You can't watch a television show now without there being gays, lesbians, transgenders, all this stuff. Commercials now have to, it's getting to where they're saying you have to, if you've got a commercial, you have to have, a gay couple, and you have to have a transgender people, and all this other stuff. You got to have that. Movies are starting to say, no, you have to have, we don't care about the content of the movie. We don't care what the movie, if the movie even has a storyline. As long as there's gay people and transgender people and all that stuff in it. Okay? They have, it's stuff on TV that you can see on TV now would have been, they would have, people would have stormed the television stations and burned them down when I was growing up if they had something like that on TV. Yeah. And now people are just, it's nothing. People don't think anything of it. Yeah, now they're doing it in schools. They've got people that are coming in, these drag queens that are coming in and teaching and reading to children. There was a church in Washington, D.C. that had a drag queen come in and preach. Okay? That's just perversion that's getting everywhere, and it's getting into the church as well. Okay? Everything is perverted. And good, what do they call them now? Cisgender. If you identify as the gender God gave you, then you're cisgender, and that's a bad thing. Okay? Bad has become good, evil has become good, and good has become evil. Okay? And this is what's going on today. And it was the same thing that was going on in Noah's time. Another one, Genesis 6:2. Demonic activity. Demonic activity. Now we had a class, Sunday school, a series in Sunday school about demons. We're talking about demons. Demonic possessions and different things like that, demonic activity. Okay? And we learned in that class that the only church that formally recognizes exorcism of demonic activity is the Catholic Church. They're the only ones that formally recognize that. And this is not like it was in the 14th, 13th, 14th, 15th century. Yeah. They kind of do, yeah, but they don't practice it much anymore. The Protestants, we acknowledge demonic activity, especially within the Pentecostals. We acknowledge demonic activity. We acknowledge demonic possession. But we don't have any official right or official thing that we do to expel or to cast out demons. Okay? That's why we've got preachers that want to come in and say, we're going to cast out these demons. No, we're not. Leave them alone. If that person doesn't want that demon cast out, you're not doing them any favors. Okay? And number one, let's make sure that we got a demonic possession here anyway. Okay? Yes?
I know that Hillary and Bill Clinton's daughter is a big pusher for this demonic stuff.
Yeah.
She's trying to get, the same amount of this Satan stuff on television as there is preaching and that now.
Yeah.
And if you'll notice, she wears a chain and it's got a cross on it, but the cross is upside down.
Yeah.
That's a sign of,
Yeah. Yeah. And the people that, the demonic activity is there. Well, the only one that, like I said, the only church that officially recognizes the an exorcism process for casting out demons is the Catholic Church. But the Catholic Church even the Catholic Church itself has said there are special trained priests that do exorcisms. They're called exorcists. That's what they do. And even they have said, they don't say how much, but they said that in the last 10 years, demonic possession has grown exponentially. Requests for exorcisms has grown exponentially in the last 10 years. Okay? Now, like I said, this isn't like it was back in the 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th century when anybody with a, if you had a mental disorder, you were automatically considered demonically possessed. All right? Now, true exorcists and true people who will go out and do these things and actually conduct exorcisms to cast out demons go through a very extensive process to determine demonic possession. Okay? And they'll do that with a series of people, medical doctors, psychiatrists, various other people will get up there and examine this person to make sure that it's not something that is a physical problem. Okay? Chemical imbalance, mental disability, something like that. Okay? And yet, even when they're doing this, they're now saying we're having an exponential increase in demonically possessed people. So there is an increase in demon possession, not just in this country, but in the world, all over. Demonic activity is on the rise. Okay? This demonic activity, sexual perversion comes from all this demonic activity. Okay? Then in Genesis 6:5, we see constant evil in the heart of man. Constant evil in the heart of man. Okay? And you're seeing that so much now. They have got these people that are, well, the ones that, the illegals that beat up the 2 police officers in New York. They'll let them go. Let them out. No bond, no bail, no anything. And then they fled to California. And then they're not going to do anything. California's not going to do anything to send them back. Okay? We got the one guy that just killed that the girl in Georgia at the University of Georgia. Okay? Huh? Yeah, arrested 40 times. Yeah. They've got but they've got so many people. Yeah, yeah. It doesn't matter. Yeah. But it's gotten to the point to where they won't prosecute. Even in New York City, the DAs are letting people out on bond that should be in hell without bond. They're murdering people. They're raping people. They're doing this stuff, and they're just letting them go back out in the streets. Okay? And the police are starting to feel helpless about it because there's nothing but constant evil in the heart of man. Man just wants to do evil. Okay? Corruption and violence. Genesis, we see that, or we're going to see it in Genesis 6:11. Corruption and violence. Corruption and violence. What do we see? I mean, if we're not seeing that now in the last few years, since what, 2018, 2016? When was it that Trump was elected? 2016, first elected was 2016. It's been nothing but corruption and violence. Of course, the government's been corrupt since well before that, and I'm not talking just Democrats. I'm talking Democrats, Republicans, all of them. Government's corrupted, you know. Now they don't even try to hide it. Now it's just no big deal. They're doing it. But there's corruption there, and there's violence all over. Okay? How many of you would, even in Alma, in our own city of Alma, Arkansas, would walk down one of the streets without street lights in it at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning? Okay? You know, yeah, would with a gun, but other than that, no, forget it. I won't do it. We don't want the, you know, we're afraid there's that fear is out there, and that's how they keep people in line. Yeah. Yeah. You can be sitting in your house and people will come running into your house. You don't even have to go walking outside. You know? It's bad. It's bad. And if you defend yourself, If you're sitting in your house and somebody breaks in and you shoot them, I don't know how, it probably wouldn't be that way here right now, but in a lot of other places, they'd put you in jail for it. You know? Yeah. Corruption and violence have just gotten way out of hand. And the Lord, like it was in the days of Noah, the Lord was sorry that he made man. That says a lot. When God says, hey, man, I regret even making the dudes. Okay? Now, God's sorrow at man and his grief at man is pretty striking when you look at it. Now, this doesn't mean that God had hope for something better, but was unable to achieve something better. Okay? This comes down to it comes down to God's omniscience and free will of man. We've talked about this before. You know, people will say, well, how does, you know, if God knew all this was going to happen, why did he let it happen? Anybody heard that before?
God just gave him a choice, and he didn't, it was up to the person to choose.
It's up to the person to choose.
God knows every outcome.
Okay. Yeah. We're gonna
It's just up to us what path we want to go down.
we're gonna talk about that in just a second on how we reconcile the two: omniscience, God's omniscience, and the free will of man. Now, most of y'all have heard me talk about this before. I'll give you a little bit of a visual illustration. I was hoping some other ones were going to be here that haven't heard this before so they can get a little view of it. Maybe they're watching and we'll get to see this. But the concept of this is what we call omni cognito per omni tempora. Okay? That's Latin, and it means all knowledge across all times. Now, notice what it says here. All times. Not all time, all times. Again, we tend to think of time linearly, right? We think of time as a straight line. We have the past, we have the present, we have the future. Okay? It's a straight line. You know? Yeah. Well, where's God in all of this? Well, God's in the past, God's in the present, God's in the future, right? But that's not how it is. Again, this is how we see time, as a straight line. But when God looks, because God is not in time, God's outside of time, and he's looking. He's outside looking into it. So for time, for God, it may be here and here and here and here and here and here and here, here and here and here, here, okay? Time is all over the place for God. Why? Because God sees every possible past, God sees every possible present, and God sees every possible future that it could be. Not just what we see, not just what we have, it's everyone that possibly could be. And where is God in all of this? Yes.
So this could possibly be an explanation for multiverse.
Well, yeah, you can kind of look at that kind of like a multiverse. Okay? But where is God in all this? Well, God's in all of it. Yeah. God's in every past, God's in every present, and God's in every future. All right? Now remember, I talked about this before, and I used the example of Schrodinger's cat. Y'all remember Schrodinger's cat? It's a thought experiment that states that if you seal a cat in a box with something that could eventually kill it, you won't know if the cat is alive or dead until you open the box. So until you open the box and observe the cat is simultaneously dead and alive. Okay? I don't like that he used cat, but that's okay. All right? So here's a visualization of Schrodinger's cat. All right? This is the thing that can kill it. This is the whatever it was that will kill it. Okay? The box is sealed. While the box is sealed up and you haven't observed it, the cat is both alive and dead. Why? Because the thing that can kill it has both broken and not broken. Okay? So those are two distinct, and they're both distinctly true, right? And until you observe the cat one way or the other, then that's how you know. So God is like that. God sees everything, every future that can possibly be, every present that can possibly be. He sees every single one of them, and He's in every single one of them. Okay? And until you, with your free will, do something in the present to influence that, all of them are distinctly true. Okay? It's all knowledge across all times. Now God is starting to see His plan unfold. Okay? And when we look at all this, God, we have to understand, God is not unfeeling in the face of human sin and rebellion. Since the fall in the garden, God has given us an ability to get out of that, okay? To avoid the sin and the rebellion. Now it says, Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. While God wanted all the earth to be cleansed, is going to cleanse all of the earth of this pollution that is there now. But He found one man to start over with. One man to begin again with. Okay? Now, notice something. Noah didn't earn grace. There wasn't anything Noah could do to earn grace. What happened? What does it say? Noah found grace. We don't earn grace. There's nothing we can do that earns grace, but we can all find grace if we just looked at it. Okay? It was true then, and it's true today. We have to find grace. Okay? All right, let's look at verses 9 and 10. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations, and Noah walked with God. And Noah begat 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Okay? Look at this. Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations. What does that mean? Comes from a good bloodline. That's one way. It's one good way of putting it. Comes from a good bloodline. All of his generations were perfect. Not only refers to the righteousness of Noah, but it also to the fact that he was yet uncorrupted by Satan's attempt to contaminate the genetic pool of man. Noah was able to make sure that the gene pool had not been corrupted yet. In other words, Noah was perfect in his genetic profile. Okay? Remember, last week we looked at all of the ones from Adam to Noah through the line of Seth. Remember, we looked through those. All of these came through. These were all just men in the eyes of God. Enoch was translated because he was so just. He was taken away without seeing death, all the way through to the point to where it had to wait for Methuselah to die in order for the flood to come about, so that a righteous man would not be killed with it. Okay? So did Noah live a perfect life? No, Noah didn't live a perfect life. Okay? But Noah's character was a righteous character. Okay? Despite all of his flaws, or despite whatever flaws he had, God saw him as righteous. Okay? How do we, and we can see this even after all of this happened. Because what's the first thing that Noah did after the flood waters receded and dried up? What's the first thing Noah did? Huh? Built an altar and he offered sacrifices. It's the first thing he did. Okay? Now Noah has 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Okay? And Noah's 3 sons are going to figure into this in a significant way, which we will see later on. God's going to use them as the foundation for the rest of the human race. He's starting over just like Adam and Eve. All right. All right, let's look at verses 11 through 13. The earth was also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. Now, he's not talking about just the people. He's talking about the earth itself. Okay? And God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted his way upon the earth. And God said unto Noah, the end of all flesh is come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Okay? The earth was corrupt, and because of this corruption, there was violence on the earth. Okay? And the extent of the corruption was so bad that God told Noah that he was going to judge the wicked along with the earth. Because what happened when everything got flooded? Everything died. He basically killed off the earth too. He didn't destroy it and recreate it, but he killed off all that was there. Now sometimes, and some people wonder, maybe was this too harsh of a judgment? Sounds kind of harsh. Okay, yeah. Yeah, it wasn't harsh. Only this time it took us, instead of 2,000 years, it took us, 4,000 years. It took us twice as long to get as corrupt as we were. Some think it shows, some people, especially agnostics, atheists, they say, well, this shows that your God is cruel. He's a monster for doing all this stuff. Right? Yeah, he killed the monster. But it wasn't God that's doing this. We're doing it to ourselves. Since Genesis chapter 3, every human has a death sentence. We've all been sentenced to death since Genesis 3, since the fall in the garden. Every one of us has been sentenced to death. Remember, God says, the day that you eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you will surely die. We weren't going to die before then. We had the tree of life. Man had the tree of life, was meant to live forever because of that tree of life. But now, because Adam and Eve ate of it, we fell. And we are under a death sentence. The timing and the method of how we die are in the hands of God. Okay? It also points to a serious problem in the world at that time. Okay? And that problem that they had was way beyond believers marrying non-believers. But God told Noah it was his intention to save him and his family. So in the midst of all of this corruption and judgment, what does this show us? Mercy. There's also grace, okay, in the midst of all this. Yes?
So Adam and Eve were basically the prototypes.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Now, since Noah's family is restarting, the population, now they can get into some deeper stuff.
Yeah. Something like that, yeah. God always is going to preserve a remnant. When we look in Revelation, when we go through Revelation, what happens? There's still a remnant that's preserved, right? People will survive. There is a remnant that is preserved. And it's the same thing that happened in the time of Noah. It's the same thing that's going to happen when the world comes to the final end. Okay? All right. Let's look at verses 14 through 16. Now we're getting into some interesting stuff here. As if the rest of it wasn't interesting. I think the rest of it was interesting anyway. All right. Make thee an ark of gopher wood. Rooms shalt thou make in the ark, and shalt pitch it within and without with pitch. And this is the fashion which thou shalt make it of. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, the breadth is 50 cubits, and the height of it 30 cubits. A window shalt thou make in the ark, and in a cubit shalt thou finish it above, and the door of the ark shalt thou set in the side thereof, with lower, second, and third stories shalt thou make it. It's going to be 3 stories tall. All right? Now it says, make thee of gopher wood. He tells them to do this, to make these things. This was Noah's project. All right? God didn't tell him to contract this out, to farm it out. God didn't say, go hire a contractor and have him do this. He says, no, you make it. You make it. Now, what was the, yes?
Did they have boats before?
No. I mean, they may have boats that they were on, in the sea, but we don't know anything about that. But this was where Noah was making this boat. There was no water, yeah. There wasn't this big sea that he was there at. Okay? Now, what was the ark to be made of? Gopher wood, yeah.
Is that an actual wood?
Okay? We don't know. It's not known exactly what kind of wood gopher wood is. This is really the only time that it's mentioned as being of something being made of gopher wood. Some think it's the way the wood was processed, or the way the wood was cut is what made it gopher wood. But what kind of tree it was, or what gopher wood actually is, we don't really know. All right? But the ark was made, and it was about 450 feet long. All right? It's about 75 feet wide, and it's about 45 feet high. Not the size of a 3-story building, 3 or 4-story building. All right. 450 feet long, that's about the size of a 30-story building. All right. Now, let's compare that, the size of that to, let's say, the Titanic. All right. This is the ark compared to the Titanic. Okay. Well, the Titanic was about around 800 feet long, something like that. Okay? Several thousand, 3,000, I think.
So basically, this is the Titanic of,
Well, it was the Titanic of the day. That's
except it's in its sink.
Yeah. Yeah. How big it really is, yeah. Yeah. Now, what's being described here is not really a boat. Okay? It's more shoebox shaped than anything. Right? So what it really was a very well ventilated barge, for the most part. We think of the ark as, as sailing around and doing that, but the ark was not meant to sail anywhere. It was just there to float. Okay? But it was not until 1858 that there was a ship built larger than the ark. It took them from the time of the flood to 1858 to build a ship bigger than the ark. Huh? Trying to remember. I don't remember right offhand what the name of it was. I saw it on there, but I don't remember what the name of it was. Okay. But it was certainly big enough to do the job that it was meant to do. That size, when you look at that, that is 1,518,750 cubic feet. That's big. Okay. That means that within the ark itself, you could fit about 273,120 sheep-sized animals. We all know what a sheep is, okay? How big a sheep is. When you average the size of animals out, they become about sheep size. So you could fit 273,120 sheep-sized animals within the ark and still have plenty of room for people, food, water, and whatever other provisions that you needed. Okay? Now, how many of you have ever heard how in the world did Noah get all of the animals, 2 of every animal, which it was more than 2, but we'll talk about that later, 2 of every animal on the ark? Impossible, right? 2 of every species. It was impossible to do, right? Well, let's look at that. There are 1.5 million animal species on the earth. Okay? Well, now, wait a minute. If there's 1.5 million animal species on the earth, and we're looking at 2 of every kind of species, that means that there's over 3 million that had to go on that ark. But we just saw that it can only hold about 273,000 of them. Sheep size, okay? Some of them are much smaller. Okay. Well,
There should have been a whole bunch of fights on there between the animals.
okay.
Some of them was, big cats and all that, and then you got the little prey and all that stuff for the cats to eat. There should have been a lot of fights on there between the animals.
Okay.
But evidently, I don't think there was.
No. Okay. Everything started off eating plants, number one. But let's look at this, okay? Still, let's get this down to understand what's going on here. All right? How we're getting these on, because this is something that people have asked, and this is something you need to understand. All right? 1.5 million species of animals on the earth. Right? Now let's break this down. Out of those, 1.05 million of those are insects. Okay? Half a million. Yeah, they all had buffets. Okay? Okay? But why is it important to know that some of these were insects? Okay. What if I...
Because insects would take, they get animal DNA, they suck their blood, or,
Okay.
I don't know,
Okay. All right. Yeah, that was Jurassic Park, but that's okay.
But the animals, they
What if I told you that there were not even any insects on the ark? What would you say? Well, Brother Stewart, how can you possibly say that there were not insects on the ark? Okay? How in the world, they're animals, so how in the world were there not insects on the ark? Well, verse number 17 tells us. Do you have proof of that? Yes, I do. Verse 17 says, animals with the breath of life. Let's look what it says. And behold, I, even I, do bring a flood upon the waters to the earth to destroy all flesh wherein is the breath of life. Right? Insects don't have lungs. Yeah. They don't have what we consider the breath of life. They breathe differently than we do. Okay? Plus, insects can usually ride on top of the water without, most insects can. So when you look at that and you subtract the insects, That only leaves 450,000 species of animals. That's a little bit more manageable, right? But that's still a lot. That would still be a minimum of 900,000 animals, right? Which we still just saw that you only get 273. Okay. All right. Well, let's break this down a little bit further. Of those species, 32,000 of them are fish. Fish didn't go on the ark, did they? Okay. You know, 85,000 of them are mollusks, like snails and things like that. How do I know all this? Because it's you got to look them up. You can find them. You can find them if you look them up. Okay? Now, I'm not going to get into breaking them all down, but et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We go on and on and on and on and on. And when we get down to it, we see that with all, okay, yeah, with all these that were, the species that were included, no breath of life, fish, marine animals, things like that, okay, we're left with about 17,500 species of animals that he had to worry about. Okay? So, the maximum number, which we will see, by looking at this, we say, well, okay, that's only about, 35,000 animals? No, because we'll see later that there was more than, there's 14 of them altogether, of the clean animals, and then some of the other. But when you break it all down, there could be a maximum of 245,000 animals on the ark. Okay? So 245,000 animals. Well, we just saw he can hold 273,000 without any problem. So 245,000 doesn't seem like much of a problem. All right? That's a lot of animals. Most of them would be probably smaller than sheep size. Okay? Number one. Number two, Noah would have only taken young animals. He wouldn't have taken adult animals. He wouldn't have taken an adult giraffe or an adult elephant or an adult rhinoceros. He wouldn't have taken an adult one. He would have taken young ones, baby ones. Why? They're smaller. They're smaller. They're going to sleep more. They're going to eat a whole lot less. And then they're going to live longer to procreate after they get off of the ark. Okay? So Noah knew that, the best thing to do is take the little ones. He just had to make sure he got a pink one and a blue one. One had to be a boy, one had to be a girl. He knew he had to do that. Right? So, when you look at this, you see that God has not yet told Noah why he has to build the ark. Noah just says, you bet, God, you want me to do that? You bet. Okay? All Noah knew was that God was going to judge the earth. That's all he knew. Yeah. He didn't know. Riley's got earphones in her ear. She can't hear. He didn't know why. All he knew is that God was going to judge the earth and he's supposed to build this big boat. That's all he knew. Okay? Now remember, at this time, it has not yet rained on the earth. It has never rained before. These people didn't know what rain was. Yes?
I feel like when it started raining, I feel like some of them actually drowned due to the rain.
Yeah, looking up at it,
Yeah, until that day, they had never seen rain.
It had never rained before.
Everything was watered by the dew.
Mm-hmm.
The grass and the flowers and all that. They had never seen rain. That's why they were laughing at Noah.
Yeah.
That was part of it.
So,
All of it. They thought he was crazy just for building
didn't it?
something.
And Noah, through all the time that he was doing it, might have thought to himself, man, I'm crazy for doing this. Because it's reasonable to suppose that Noah didn't know what God had in mind. Okay? Yeah.
Well, at that time, yes. And it pretty much would be.
But God had not yet told Noah how he was going to. Noah only knew that there was going to be a judgment. Noah only knew that the God was going to judge these people on the earth. Noah knew that he told him to build this big boat. So what did he do? Noah built the boat. He made it. Yes.
120 years.
It didn't quite take him 120.
Things then, didn't they?
Huh?
Small boats maybe, and they done some fishing? Or not?
Yeah, probably.
Concept of what
Probably
a boat
they
was.
had a concept of what a boat was. Okay.
What they was wondering is where was he going to float that?
Yeah, where was he going to float this big old thing? He's building on land. Okay. Yeah. So it took him 100 years to build it, and we saw that God said that He was going to destroy the world in 120 years. So it took him up some time to get everything together to start building it. Okay. But beyond the Bible, there is rich historical evidence for the reality of Noah's Ark. We see this. Okay.
So the only question I have is, did God summon animals to him, or did he have to search the whole wide world?
No, the animals came. The animals came to him. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it wasn't really too hard for him to do that.
Yeah.
If they were called to the boat.
Yeah. Yeah. He brought him up there. God brought him up. But beyond the Bible, there is rich historical evidence of the reality of Noah's Ark. In 275 BC, Berosus, a Babylonian historian, wrote about it. Josephus, the Jewish historian, talked about the ark. Theophilus of Antioch in AD 180 wrote about it. In 1856, an atheist scientist said that he found the ark, found where it was at, said he saw it, and he was going out to disprove its existence when he found it. Okay? In 1918, another one did the same thing. So,
The Russian army had found it and filmed it with the soldiers going in and out of the ark.
yeah. In 1916, 6 Turkish soldiers claimed to have seen it. So there's a lot of, I can go on and on, I've got a bunch of them, that, now the ark, it's, where the ark is, a lot of the Muslim countries won't let people go into where they believe the ark is at right now to explore it. Okay? Well, some people might think, well, how could it last this long? Well, God told him to cover it inside and out with pitch. Okay? Pitch is like tar. It's a petroleum-type product, all right, that it works to waterproof the wood, is what it does. Okay? So it doesn't sink, yeah. And God told Noah to cover it inside and out. When he told him to cover it inside and out, it's very possible that the ark has been preserved all of this time.
Where it needs to be.
Yeah. And it may be preserved all of this time because it's possible that God still has a purpose for that ark. We don't know, but he still may have a purpose for it. Yeah. But imagine if that came up, just somebody was actually able to uncover and do an archaeological dig and uncover the ark. Just think of what that would do. Here's proof right there. All right, we're going to end it right there for tonight. That gets us through chapter 6, part 2. And we will get into the rest of it, finish up chapter 6 next week, and get into chapter 7 and see how many of them actually were on there. Okay. Any questions, comments, concerns, amens, omes? No? All right.
Whenever you talk about they don't want someone to prove it's the ark or whatever, but they would be able to prove every kind of animal that was on it
Yeah.
by the debris that was left.
Yeah. By everything that was left. I still think it's funny, though. Somebody said one time, well, what did all the lions and the lions and tigers and all those meat eaters, what did they eat? Yeah, lions and tigers and bears. Oh my, what did all those meat eaters eat? This guy says they ate the bodies of all those sinners floating around out there. There was plenty of meat for them out there, I'm sure. Okay, nothing else? Then, Pastor, pray us out of here.